Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, boys and girls. Today's lab is about VLANs, so we are going to configure VLANs. Lab 6. Let's go ahead and read the instructions before we start the configurations. We are going to use Packet Tracer mainly because there are some phones. Configuring that in GNS3 can be difficult, a little bit difficult and challenging. So we want to take things easily and work as much as possible. The more labs that we work, the better. So let's start with this one. It's the lab 6. Let's go and read the instructions. This is the task. All physical cabling between the two switches is installed. Configure the network connectivity between the switches using the designated VLANs and interfaces. Configure VLAN 12, name compute, and VLAN 34, name telephony, where required for each task. Configure Ethernet 0/1 on switch SW2 to use the existing VLAN name available. Configure the connection between these switches using access ports. Configure Ethernet 0/1 on switch 1 using the data and voice VLANs. Configure Ethernet 0/1 on switch 2 so that Cisco proprietary neighbor discovery protocol is turned off for the designated interface only. So let me stop sharing the video so we can focus on this content. We did a modified version of this lab with Packet Tracer, but it's basically the same. So here in the website, you can download, this is the name of the lab, VLAN Voice LAB 3. You can download the Packet Tracer file and start from there. We already read the instructions, so let's start with the configurations. So the first thing we do is go to switch 1 and add a couple of configurations there, mainly the one for the telephone and the VLAN 12 and 34. And then we go to VLAN switch 2 and add the VLAN's information there on the access ports. So let's start with this. In this case, the only difference is that instead of Ethernet 0/0, we have fast Ethernet 0/10. But basically, the lab is pretty much the same thing. So let's start with the configurations that we need to do for switch 1. Let's go to switch 1. Let me just double click there. Enable. And let's start with that. First thing we do. First thing we need to do is do the configure terminal, execute configure terminal, configure terminal. So we need to create VLAN 12. Let me know why. Mainly because we are in switch 1 and the VLAN 12 is there for that specific host. Let me see if in the other topology we can see the VLAN 12. Okay, in fact, we have VLAN 12 and VLAN 34 in this specific topology. It's not there. Oh, they are in the topology of Packet Tracer, VLAN 12 and 34. So let's start with the commands. We are working alone in switch 1. Let's start doing some configurations. So VLAN 12. Do you guys remember the name for VLAN 12? This is right there, compute. So let's add the name compute. Then we have to do VLAN 34 with the name of telephone. Now let me double check because in the instructions it says telephony and he configured that telephone. It shouldn't make a very big deal or differences. But if in the instructions says telephony, we have to do telephony. So let's do telephony. Telephony. Let's ignore this for now. We are doing telephony. Now we have to do the interface between the switches, switch 1 and 2. So interface FA0/10, we do switchboard mode access. Switchboard access VLAN 12. Okay. Are we adding the correct configuration? Let's double check. Let me just close this. Okay, VLAN 12 is there. Yes, we are configuring between routing switches 1 and 2, the VLAN 12. You can double check there in the diagram here. Okay, let's work along to add all the configurations there in switch 1. So we have to do, after adding the VLAN 12, we have to do interface FA 0/1. We are right here. So we are configuring the phone. But first, we need to add the access to this PC. So it has access to VLAN 12. So let's go with that. Switch for mode access. Switch for access VLAN 12. Now, since we are adding a voice VLAN, we can add it right here with no problems. Switch port. Voice, very careful about that, VLAN 34, and then end. Then with write, we are able to save the changes. We have successfully configured the VLAN's access, both for the interface of the switches, fuzzy 0/10, and the interface that goes to the telephone and the PC. First, we configure the access to VLAN 12 for the PC, and then the switch for voice VLAN 34 for the phone. Now, what do we need to do? We need to go to switch 2 and add some configurations there. So let's go there. Let's start with enable, config T, and let's do the configurations. So basically, it's the same VLANs. We need to allow those VLANs there. But this PC, if I'm not mistaken, is only assigned to one VLAN. Let's double check in the diagram. It says VLAN available. We will see what they mean with VLAN available. Name, switch for access VLAN 12. So it's actually VLAN 12, the compute VLAN that we are going to use for this PC. Okay. So first thing we do is create the VLAN 12, name compute. If we do BTP configurations, we might be able to add and propagate the information from switch 1 to switch 2, but it's not required for this lab, so we are not going to do it. But just for you to be informed. Okay, now I added the incorrect VLAN. We don't need this one. We need VLAN. Let me do a show VLAN brief real quick. Okay, only compute at 99. So we need to do the following. We have to do config T, interface VLAN. We have to do actually VLAN 34, name telephony. You guys remember that it was not telephone, but telephony, according to instructions, interface FA 0/10, switch remote access. They requested that we configure access between the switches. So switch for access VLAN 12. There was a main request, so we do it like that. And now we have to do interface FA 01, switch for mode access, switch for access VLAN 99. In fact, we are not using VLAN 12. That was my mistake. We are using VLAN 12 only for between the switches 2 and 1, but for the PC, fast Ethernet 0/1, which is represented here by Ethernet 0/1, we are using VLAN 99 for that PC. Now, we have a request about Cisco proprietary neighbor discovery. We need to turn that off. And in order to do that, we have to do it in the Ethernet 0/1 in switch 2. But in this case, it's represented by fast Ethernet 0/1. So we go there to router to switch 2, and we do the following. We execute no CDP, enable. Remember, you have to do that inside the interface of fast Ethernet 0/1 or Ethernet 0/1, depending on the equipment that you have. After doing end, you have to do a write. And the last thing we need to do is basically go to the switches and validate that the configuration is being safe. And it is actually safe. Now, if we have two PCs in the same VLAN, we should be able to ping each other. Let me see if there are configurations added to the PC. I don't know if we have any. We don't have any IP addresses, so the PCs will not be able to communicate unless they are in the same VLAN and they have some IP addresses. Let me do something. Let me check on something real quick. We want to go further into this lab. We already completed the lab, but I wanted to check something. Let's go to the PDF file of this lab. This is in VLAN 12, and this is in VLAN 12 as well. No, this is VLAN 99. No, they will not be able to communicate with each other, even if we configure IP addresses, because they are on different VLANs. So that's the reason, because they will not be able to communicate unless we configure some static routing protocol or something, some encapsulation protocol, so they communicate with different VLANs. So for the time being, this is everything for today's lab. We should be all good. It was a fast lab, but attention to detail, guys, boys and girls. It's important, attention to details. Things like that, like adding in the correct command, like no CDP enabled in the correct interface in switch 2. Adding the voice VLANs after adding the access of the VLAN 12 in switch 1. Those small details are very important for the exam. So that will be everything for today's lessons. Take care, boys and girls, and I see you around. Goodbye.